July 23, 2025. The courtroom fell silent as the judge's gavel came down. For consecutive life sentences, no chance of parole.
Truth be told, I'm unable to come up with anything redeeming about Mr. Kohberger because his grotesque acts of evil have buried and hidden anything that might have been good or intrinsically human about him. His actions have made him the worst of the worst. Even in pleading guilty, he is giving nothing hinting of remorse or redemption, nothing suggesting even a recognition or understanding, let alone regret for the pain that he has caused. And therefore I will not attempt to speak about him further, other than to simply sentence him so that he is forever removed from civilized society.
Bryan Kohberger, convicted in the deaths of 4 University of Idaho students, was now facing a new kind of reality. Because what waited for him inside Idaho Maximum Security Institution wasn't freedom, redemption, or even peace. It was a life defined by isolation and control. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why his existence inside those walls may be worse than death itself. Stay with me until the end, and when you've heard the full story, tell us in the comments if you agree. Because just hours after arriving, his first complaint gave the world a glimpse of what life inside would truly be like. But that was only the beginning of a long, unending chapter that would test him every single day. On the evening of July 23rd, Bryan Kohberger was transferred to the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, located just south of Boise. This wasn't an ordinary prison. It's Idaho's only maximum security facility, home to some of the state's most closely monitored inmates, including those on death row. For safety and control, Kohberger was placed in J Block, a long-term restrictive housing unit with around 30 inmates. What makes this unit particularly notable is who's kept there: Idaho's most high-profile and high-risk prisoners. Among his neighbors are individuals like Chad Daybell, convicted in one of the state's most infamous cases. Life in J Block is structured and heavily regulated. Kohberger spends about 23 hours a day inside his cell, with 1 hour reserved for outdoor recreation. He lives alone in a single cell, and whenever he moves, he's placed in restraints. Showers come every other day, and his world is now limited to a small concrete space. But it wasn't the physical restrictions that would test him the most. It was the mental strain of isolation and the adjustment to a system he had once studied from the outside. During his first week, Kohberger was held in a medical transition unit in C Block while officials assessed his condition and determined his long-term placement. Even in this short period, it became clear that he wasn't ready for the strict routine of prison life. Just 4 days after arriving, he filed his first complaint, not about safety or mistreatment, but about something far simpler. He couldn't access the prison's electronic payment system, known as JPay, to order commissary items. A correctional officer explained that the setup process takes time after a transfer. For Kohberger, this was his first real adjustment, a reminder that inside prison, he wasn't a scholar or a criminology student. He was just another inmate learning how to navigate the system. And as the days went on, the reality of his situation was only beginning to sink in. July 29, 2025, Bryan Kohberger was moved to his permanent cell on the second tier of J Block, known as J2. His first 2 nights there were far from peaceful. The next day, July 30th, he filed his first major complaint, and this is where things began to take a troubling turn. Through the air vents, he began hearing constant voices, shouts, insults, and taunts from other inmates. Unlike the stillness of his cell, these sounds never stopped. They echoed day and night, leaving him unable to escape the noise. Kohberger later described it as minute-by-minute verbal harassment. Every hour of every day, he said, someone was saying something through the vents, an ongoing reminder that even in isolation, he wasn't alone. Chris McDonough, a retired detective and director at the Cold Case Foundation, who was familiar with conditions inside the unit, explained, "I don't think Bryan Kohberger anticipated the psychological pressure he'd face from other inmates. As soon as he got there, it started, and he began filing complaints. But the difficult part for prison officials was that there wasn't much they could do." One correctional officer confirmed hearing inmates shouting toward Kohberger's cell around that time. However, because they couldn't determine exactly who was responsible, the complaint was closed. No formal action was taken. It quickly became clear that inmates had found a way to get under his skin, using the shared ventilation system to make their presence known, while avoiding individual accountability. And the tension inside J Block was only escalating. That same day, Kohberger also reported that some inmates were intentionally causing disturbances by flooding their cells. This wasn't random misbehavior, it was a tactic meant to draw attention and create chaos in the unit. Kohberger requested to be moved to B-Block, a quieter section of the facility, citing the ongoing disruptions and the stressful environment. But officials denied his request, stating that J-Block was generally a calm and controlled area, and advised him to give it some time. For someone already struggling to adjust, that response only deepened the sense of helplessness. According to forensic psychologist Dr. Gary Brucato, individuals like Kohberger, used to structure, control, and analyze, often find the unpredictability of prison life overwhelming. In his case, isolation didn't mean peace, it meant pressure. And with every complaint he filed, the tension inside J-Block continued to grow. The very next day, July 31st, Kohberger filed a formal complaint about his meals. "I have, on several occasions, not received all items on my tray," he wrote, requesting that missing food items be replaced according to policy. Kohberger follows a strict vegan diet, and while the Idaho Department of Correction provides vegan options, he claimed his trays were occasionally incomplete. "The nutritional standard is not being upheld unless I receive my full tray." For someone used to control and precision, these small lapses in structure clearly got under his skin. And for observers, it painted a picture of a man struggling with the loss of even the smallest freedoms. Experts quickly weighed in on Kohberger's behavior. Paul Morrow, a retired NYPD inspector, noted, "From what's been reported, Kohberger appears to be overly focused on minor grievances. It doesn't suggest he's adjusting well to life inside." Keith Rovere, a former prison minister and host of Lighter Side of True Crime, added, "Inmates quickly learn who can handle pressure and who can't. Complaining too much can make things harder for you inside." And that's the key point. Every complaint, every grievance was sending a message to the other inmates. In a place where silence can mean strength, Kohberger's words were only making his time behind bars more difficult. August 12, 2025, 3 weeks into his sentence, the Idaho Department of Correction held a housing placement hearing for Bryan Kohberger. After multiple incidents inside J-Block, he formally requested to be moved into protective custody. During the hearing, something unexpected happened. Kohberger showed a rare moment of self-awareness. He admitted that the tension and harassment he'd been experiencing would likely fade once public attention around his case slowed down. But his next statements revealed just how difficult life behind bars had become. He asked to continue having recreation time alone and to be escorted individually for safety reasons. Yet at the same time, he expressed a desire to eventually work and find ways to be productive while in custody. Perhaps most notably, he asked for the same recreation privileges as another high-profile inmate in the same unit, showing that even in isolation, he was closely observing how others were treated. After deliberation, the 3-member housing committee reached their decision. Kohberger would remain in administrative segregation, the same restricted environment he was already in. It was determined to be the safest option for both staff and inmates, including Kohberger himself. A spokesperson for the department later explained, "Incarcerated individuals commonly communicate with each other in prison. Bryan Kohberger is housed alone in a cell, and IDOC staff maintain a safe and orderly environment for everyone in custody." In other words, occasional noise and inmate interaction are simply part of the environment, and not something easily eliminated. But for Kohberger, adapting to that reality was proving difficult. By this point, he had filed 5 formal complaints in just 3 weeks, nearly one every few days. Prison consultant Cameron Lindsay later told Fox News Digital that Kohberger's housing situation was unlikely to change anytime soon. "My prediction is he'll remain where he is," Lindsay said. "He's currently in a secure setting that protects both him and others." Lindsay also noted that adjusting quietly to prison routines often helps reduce tension over time, advice Kohberger seemed unable to follow. Every new complaint or request for transfer drew more attention, not less. And inside J-Block, that attention didn't go unnoticed. The more Kohberger reacted, the more his fellow inmates realized how much the environment was affecting him, and the atmosphere around him grew increasingly tense. By mid-August, Kohberger's life inside J-Block had become a study in monotony, long stretches of silence broken only by irritation and routine. That week, he filed yet another grievance, this time over a missing supply bag. Staff reminded him that requests were processed once a week. It was a minor issue, but for someone used to control and precision, it carried weight. Inside, every small inconvenience became magnified. For Kohberger, this was what existence had narrowed down to: forms, schedules, and waiting. Filing a complaint wasn't just about fixing problems anymore. It was about holding on to some shred of control in a world where he had none. A few days later, on August 18th, he sent a note thanking Sergeant Martin for helping him with commissary printouts. His JPay account issues were finally fixed. For a man who once analyzed criminal behavior, this counted as progress, gratitude for paperwork, satisfaction over digital access. It showed how far he had fallen from the academic precision of his old life. Every tiny victory was now a way to stay sane. Every delay, a reminder that time inside this place moved differently, slow, heavy, and endless. Then came something unexpected. In mid-August, reports surfaced online claiming that short clips of Kohberger inside his cell had leaked on social media. The Idaho Department of Correction launched an internal investigation, warning staff that any recording or distribution of security footage would result in severe consequences. Whether the footage was real or not didn't matter. The rumor alone was enough to remind him that privacy, even here, was an illusion. News outlets covered it for days, and inside J Block, inmates whispered about it. Kohberger couldn't escape being the focus of attention, even behind concrete and steel. Defense attorney and Taylor publicly condemned the alleged leak, reminding the public that the justice process should never become a spectacle. But the truth was clear. For Bryan Kohberger, the spectacle never stopped. The world outside still wanted to see him, to peer through the cracks of his isolation. And inside, that knowledge only deepened the pressure. To understand the world closing in on him, you have to know what Idaho Maximum Security Institution really is. It's not just a prison, it's a fortress built for control. Every corridor, door, and movement is monitored. The chairs and tables are bolted down. Even the outdoor yards are concrete enclosures wrapped in metal fencing. Here, structure isn't a choice, it's the air everyone breathes. J Block, where Kohberger lives, is among the most restrictive units in the entire state. Many of Idaho's most dangerous inmates, including death row prisoners, are housed there. Kohberger's neighbors are men who've already reached the end of the line. He's serving the same kind of sentence, just without an execution date. Every sound in that place, every echo through the vents, reminds him he's surrounded by people who will never leave. The difference is they've accepted it. He hasn't. During his sentencing, Kaylee Goncalvez's mother told him, "May you continue to live your life in misery. You are officially the property of the state of Idaho." That phrase marked the end of everything, because now every second of his life belongs to the system, a slow punishment that never stops ticking. So, why is Bryan Kohberger's prison life considered worse than death? Let's break it down. First, there's the question of time. If Kohberger had received the death penalty, he would have faced years on death row, knowing that one day there would be an ending, however distant. But now, he's facing something very different. A lifetime inside Idaho's most restrictive facility. Decades, possibly half a century, of the same routine, the same walls, and the same silence. 50 years of isolation, limited human contact, and endless repetition. Death, in a sense, is final. But what Kohberger experiences is something ongoing, a slow mental erosion that comes from monotony and loneliness. Every day brings new frustrations, small reminders of how confined his world has become. Every voice echoing through the vents reminds him that no part of this experience is truly private or peaceful. Inside the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, nearly every decision is made for him. When to shower, when to eat, when to step outside his cell, all determined by a schedule. Even small things like his commissary orders or video calls depend on approval. His life is structured down to the minute with almost no personal freedom. The same concrete walls, the same metal fixtures, the same narrow routine day after day. Research shows that long-term isolation can cause disorientation, anxiety, and depression, and Kohberger's situation is not short-term. This is how his life will continue year after year, without change. He knows this is it. No parole, no new beginning, no way out except through time itself. Every morning, he wakes up to the same silence. Every night, he goes to sleep knowing tomorrow will look exactly the same. That knowledge alone, the certainty of permanence, may be the hardest part of all. At his sentencing, the victims' families made it clear that they wanted justice. and that they hoped he would live with the weight of his actions. It seems that reality has arrived. Kohberger's punishment isn't dramatic or violent. It's quiet, unchanging, and deeply psychological. The voices through the vents still echo. The paperwork continues. The days blend together, one after another, in an endless loop of sameness. This is Bryan Kohberger's reality now. This is his sentence. This is his forever. And unlike death, there's no escape, only time. If you found this deep dive into Bryan Kohberger's prison life as haunting as we did, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more true crime stories from Crime Shade. Tell us in the comments, do you think life in isolation is a tougher punishment than the death penalty? We'll see you in the next video.